According to a listing by an online retailer, the next Battlefield game will be, quote, a multiplayer tactical shooter in World War I, end quote. Here's what we know about the next Battlefield title. It's going to be released in October of this year, and it's going to take place in a military setting like most Battlefield games, as opposed to the most recent Battlefield game, which was a police criminal kind of urban setting. Beyond that, we don't know much except for this leak. I asked you guys on Twitter if you'd like this setting for the next Battlefield game, and you guys said yes, like a girl waiting on a proposal. Unfortunately, I don't share the same sentiment, and I don't think a World War I shooter would be a good idea for the next Battlefield game. Think about the characteristics of a Battlefield game. Large conquest battles moving between objectives, infantry and vehicles fighting alongside and against one another, and a plethora of gadgets, weapons, and customization to those weapons. A World War I setting doesn't lend itself to any of these things I just mentioned. World War I was dominated by trench warfare, as advances in weaponry like machine guns and artillery was not matched by advances in mobility, leading to this defensive style warfare. Who the fuck wants to play a game filled with campers? After months of fighting back and forth, the battle lines didn't even move the length of a football field. This situation isn't ideal for the bread and butter conquest game mode of Battlefield, where you take over objectives on a huge scale and you move around the map in order to take those objectives. Tanks were way too unreliable because of the terrain used in trench warfare, and unusable because of the mechanical issues in the First World War, even though they were involved in some combat. Helicopters weren't used in World War I, as they were still in early development. Airplanes were mostly used as recon jets until the last years of the war, when they were fitted with machine guns and sometimes gas grenades and bombs. The only true vehicles that had diversity and impact in World War I were the warships that included destroyers and submarines. So that aspect of Battlefield would be severely diminished in a World War I setting. And forget about having tons of different bippity-bops to mess around with like we're accustomed to in a Battlefield game. Battlefield 4 has over 100 different weapons and over 40 different gadgets, which honestly is a bit overkill because there isn't too much variation in lots of the classes at times. Yet, in World War I, if you were an infantry person on the front line, semi-automatic rifle with a bayonet, a pistol, and sometimes some grenades. There was the occasional trench shotgun, sniper rifles, flamethrowers, and the very first SMGs were created around this time. But there just weren't a large variety of weapons aside from the experimental ones that people cobbled together on the front lines. Heavy, immobile machine guns and artillery were the only variety to your basic single-shot rifle, so that's not going to be ideal for a Battlefield game either. It's not just the weapons themselves, but there weren't things like red dot sights, different muzzle options, different grip attachments, zero customization in terms of weapons during this time period. We all saw what happened with a game that did not have a lot of content in it. Titanfall. Now, I could see why some people might think this is cool. There really aren't any World War I era FPS games to play aside from Verdun, which is extremely bare bones. But guess what? That's how World War I was. There wasn't a huge advancement in technology like World War II and beyond to give a variety of weapons. I know that people are sick of the oversaturated modern day and even futuristic shooters, which is why I think a Battlefield 2142 sequel would be a huge mistake, especially after hearing the bombshell from JD's latest video that the next Call of Duty game will be both futuristic and even set in fucking space. If Battlefield wants to cut into Call of Duty sales, don't try and go toe-to-toe with them. Deliver to the potential customers what they fucking want. We saw Battalion 1944, a game which had a goal of £100,000, raise 3 times as much to go towards production for their Kickstarter. This should give EA and DICE a giant clue as to where their next game should be. Personally, I'm not a huge World War II fan because to me the guns are still a bit arcane, the setting is very, very dark and dreary, and I was old enough to get sick of the World War II era of FPS games back before Call of Duty 4 changed everything. However, people don't want a futuristic or even modern day military shooter game anymore. If I were Battlefield, I would choose either the Korean War or the Vietnam War as my setting for my next game. I know that you have more creative freedom with a futuristic or even modern day military shooter because you could extrapolate weaponry and bend the rules a little bit. However, there have not been many FPS games that have been done in this era of warfare before. Bad Company 2's Vietnam expansion is one of the most highly acclaimed expansions of all time, and they already made this type of game in Battlefield Vietnam Vietnam, which was released back in 2005. Other than those that I just mentioned and Call of Duty Black Ops, there really hasn't been a major title released in this setting. This setting has more weaponry and gadget options than that of World War I or even World War II, and the locations fit with the Battlefield characteristics that we've all come to know and love, like helicopters, tanks, large-scale maps with differentiated bases to capture. Tons of Call of Duty fans, not myself mind you, are clamoring for a return to boots on the ground. If we believe the leaks confirming Ghost 2 via that random fucking foreign magazine and the space shooter that I said before, then you have a giant portion of the market that's there to steal. It's a huge opportunity to finally topple the COD giant, and I don't think it's going to happen with the World War I style game, or a futuristic approach in Battlefield 2143, or even a World War II era game in Battlefield 1944. I think that Battlefield Vietnam 2 is the way to go if you're not going to do a Battlefield 5 as a sequel to Battlefield 4 in a modern military day setting, which I don't particularly mind because Battlefield 4 is one of my favorite FPS games of all time. I can also see it being cool to do a post-World War II game if they do an alternate history type of thing where Nazi Germany won the war instead of the Allies. This has been done numerous times in games, think Command & Conquer Red Alert, but not so much in FPS games. Battlefield has been known to extrapolate and create these types of different alternate universe settings, and if the Final Stand DLC for Battlefield 4 is any indication of which they created maps to explain the story behind Battlefield 2142, they could do it for the entire game based on this sci-fi alternate universe setting. If EA Dice were smart, they ditch the rumored World War I idea if it's not too late to do so based on development timelines. If I wanted to play a futuristic shooter, I have Halo, I have Titanfall, and now I have Call of Duty already in that crowded space. Why not take the opportunity to capture the audience that's been left out in the cold to deliver something different instead of trying to keep up with the Joneses? That is how you win, and that is what the players want as well. Unfortunately, a World War I setting isn't going to be the way to do this. It's going to move the franchise backwards, not forwards, in terms of what we expect from a Battlefield title.